Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem. Welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Maseches NIDAH Daf Nun. We are at the Mishnah on Mem Tes Amud Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. Kol kosher loden. So back to that opposite track. So we have examples of cases where item A comes along with item B, but not necessarily in the reverse. Not necessarily does item or concept B automatically come along with concept A. We had some examples yesterday. Here comes some more. Kol kosher loden, kosher l'ha'id. An individual who is qualified to serve as a dayan in a bezdin can certainly serve as a witness in a bezdin. But v'yesh shekosher l'ha'id ve'ein kosher loden. I'll give you an example of somebody fit for edus, but unfit to be a judge. So who's the fellow that we just referred to? Lasuyimai. Who are you including? Meaning who is okay for edus despite being unfit for dayanus? A fellow who's partially blind. One eye is non-functioning. Now Rashi points out, so this individual can serve as a witness as long as he's not fully blind, because otherwise, Rashi brings a pasuk raw, he has to have some ability to see, otherwise he wouldn't be fit to be witness either. So some ability he has, in which case he's kosher for edus, but not to be a dayan. Umani, who's speaking? Whose opinion is this? We'll turn to the next topic. It's Rab Meir, the son of Brisa. Here, Rab Meir. We have the pasuk that you approach the leaders, the kehanim, and they'll dictate to us regarding all matters of. It refers to Nega Manners. They'll assess the Nega, and they'll also adjudicate matters of dispute. The son what does the pasuk mean? Al pihem, based on their dictation, yekol riv v'chol nega, will be all matters of dispute and nega. And the question is, what's the comparison here? What's the connection? V'chima inyan rivim eitzel negoim. Why are we discussing fights and disputes next to negoim? You would think they're totally separate tracks. For instance, who tends to a nega? That must be a kayin, as opposed to financial disputes that are adjudicated by anybody. You don't have to be a kayin for that. On the other hand, you need to be a qualified a scholar to be a dayan, as opposed to assessing a nega that can be accomplished by any kayin in the street. So why are we comparing the two? Says Rab Meir, I'll tell you why. To make some comparative equations here. Makish rivim v'negoim. Torah is connecting the disputes to negoim to learn. Ma negoim b'yayim, just as a nega must be assessed only during daytime. T'chsiv uv'yayim heroyis boy. It's assessed by day. Af rivim b'yayim likewise. Nega Manners, financial matters must be adjudicated only during daytime. U'ma negoim shlei b'suma. And likewise, just as a nega can only be assessed by a unblind kohen, he has to have full sight on both eyes. He's fully capable of seeing it. Likewise, rivim must be tended to by dayanim with fully functioning eyesight. And we go in the reverse as well. Torah is now connecting the assessment of negoim to matters of dispute. Just like rivim can only be settled by non-relatives, only a non-relative is qualified to be a dayan in a bezdin. Rashi brings the pasuk, fathers, sons cannot be involved in their af negoim shleibikrim. Likewise, the kohen who assesses a nega must be a non-relative. That was the issue with Miriam, right? Hanaviah, she had the nega, and the question was, who's going to examine the nega. Aaron HaKohen is a karev, right? So a karev cannot look at a nega. Says the Gemara, if you're going to compare the two, perhaps take it a step further, just like a bezdin must have at least 3 members. Likewise, a nega must be assessed by 3 kayanim b'dinu, and it makes sense. Look, if a person's merely his money, which is separate from the person himself, so that secondary element needs 3. Certainly pertains to his own person, his own self. A nega, certainly it would need 3. Talmud Lemar comes to pasuk. No, even a single kohen is qualified to deal with it. Talmud Lemar b'huval arna kohen oil achad v'bana kayanim. Clearly, 1 kohen is enough. Halamata. That leads to a conclusion. Shafilu kohen echad v'reis, even 1 kohen can see a nega. In conclusion, we see that Rameir, through this comparison between Rivim and Negaim, learns that just like by a nega, all agree, the kohen has to have full eyesight. Likewise, says Rameir, by Rivim, a dayan must have that ability as well. And that explains our Mishnah. At times, a fellow is fit to be an aid. For instance, if he has eyesight just in one eye, but unfit for a dayan. Whereas the Chachamim, we'll see soon, the Chachamim hold, there's no such qualification by a dayan. In fact, there was a story, how was Samya, there was this blind man, the Hava Bishop Busid Rabbi Yechanan, who lived near Rabbi Yechanan, but Dayan Dina. He was involved in adjudicating dinim. He was a dayan. And Rabbi Yechanan did not object. Rabbi Yechanan didn't get in his way. Why? Why did Rabbi Yechanan allow this? We have a Mishnah, a Stam Mishnah, an anonymous Mishnah, which is presumably aligned with the Halacha L'Maisa, which doesn't allow a blind dayan. Rabbi Yechanan teaches that we follow a Stam Mishnah Utnan. And we just had a Mishnah which taught us that a blind fellow, even partially blind, certainly fully blind, unfit for a dayan, Utnan, kol kosher lodun, kosher lahoid. But v'yesh shekosher lahoid, sometimes an individual is fit for edus, but not for dayanos. V'en kosher lodun. Barminan, we asked, lasuya mai, what is this referring to? Rabbi Yechanan, he himself explained to us that it's coming lasuya sum bachas me'inav. Even partially blind is unfit to be a dayan. So why did he allow that dayan, a blind dayan, to officiate? Says the Gemara, because there's another Mishnah, Masechah Sanhedrin, which allows it, in line with the Shitas Chachamim, that eyesight is not a pre-qualification for a dayanos. Rabbi Yechanan, he found a different anonymous Mishnah which allows it. This now we have a Mishnah back in Sanhedrin, Nega Manners, Danan Bayim, Nega Manners. So unlike Rameir, who holds that by comparing Rivim to Negaim, we learn just like by a nega, it needs to be a kohen with full eyesight, and also it has to be during daytime. Uviyayim, right? Likewise, Rivim need to be during daytime. But the Mishnah Sanhedrin clearly disagrees. We don't have this comparison to Negaim. In fact, the Mishnah allows Dinei Mamanis Danan Bayayim, but V'goyim Relayla, you have to start by day, but you can issue the verdict at night. Apparently, there is no such comparison to Negaim, and likewise, there's no disqualification for a blind dayan. Rabbi Yechanan sided with that Mishnah, and therefore he allowed the neighbor to proceed. And the question is, look, why did he prefer that Mishnah over our Mishnah? Both Mishnahs are Stam Mishnahs, anonymous Mishnahs, and presumably are meant to be followed lahalacha. That's why Rebbe, the compiler of the Mishnah, did not attach a name to it. He wanted it to be just, adopted lahalacha l'maisa. Why? The high stomach. Why is that stomach in Sanhedrin stronger and more convincing than our Stam Mishnah in Maseches NIDAH? 2 answers. Ibai saying one answer, Stomach derabim adif. Unlike our Stam Mishnah, which was aligned with merely Rameir's Shita, which is an individual opinion, that Mishnah in Sanhedrin is aligned with the Rabbim. Shidas Hachamim, so that's preferred. Same another reason, because unlike our Mishnah Maseches NIDAH, it was just sort of brought along by the way, as a sort of a link in the chain, in the string of cases, of these contrasting opposites. So it's not as authoritative as a Mishnah in Sanhedrin, which is smack in the middle, right in the thick of things. Discussions about Dinim and Sanhedrin. And if over there, Rebbe presented it as Da Mishnah, that implies that it's authoritative. It's meant to be followed, the halacha. Okay, in conclusion, blindness is a disqualifying factor regarding Negoim. According to Rebbe Meir, it carries over to Rivim as well, which the Chacham dispute, and that's how we pass on halach. Next Mishnah calls Chayv Masros mitami tumas oichlem. Any type of item, any food material which is subject to halachas of maestros, because it's qualifying food, certainly is susceptible to tumah, which relates to food as well. If it's maser, it's tumas oichlem, goes together, it's food. But it doesn't necessarily work the other way around. You can have things which are considered food regarding tumas oichlin, but they're not chayv maser. For instance, asuyi mai, asuyi basar v'dagim u'beitzim. All kinds of food matter. Meat, fish, eggs, they're food galore. They're chayv. Can become a tumas oichlin, but maser is specific to something which grows out of the ground, as opposed to these. Next Mishnah, any crop which is subject to hilchos peya, for which you have to leave, a corner of the field, a corner of the patch for the poor. Chayv maser, certainly it's chayv maser, because as we've seen in the Gemara, peya has a higher standard. There are more qualifying conditions to activate peya over maser. So if it's in on peya, it's certainly in on maser, but not the other way. Sometimes things are chayv maser, but not in peya, because it only fits the bill regarding maser. Does not have those qualifying conditions to activate peya. For instance, asuyi mai, what would this refer to? Something which is in on maser, but not in on peya. Asuyi tein of yarak, figs, vegetables. She'en chayv peya, they're exempt from peya. Because, as we mentioned, peya has more qualifying requirements, has 5 conditions as opposed to masers, which only need 3 conditions. And the tein of yarak, although they have the 3, but not the 5. It's not. Regarding peya, we have the following rule. Only something which conforms to the following 5 conditions is chayv and peya. Kosher eichel, something which is considered food, edible. V'nishmar, so it's edible for human consumption. V'nishmar, it's guarded, meaning it's not ownerless, it's not hefker. V'gdul min haaretz, it grows out of the ground. It's picked all at once, so the crop is all taken together. This is learned from the pasuk tzir. It says that the corner of your katzir, right? So a typical harvest, a grain crop, is all picked at once. So only something which conforms to that criteria is chayv and peya. Umachis lakim, and just like grain, it has to have shelf life. It has to be something that you can store. Something which contains these 5 features, chayv and peya, and the Gemara will now elaborate on each one. Oichel, so it has to be something fit for human consumption. As opposed to these wild growths of stis v'koitza. These are plants which are used to create dye. Rashi points out, why does the Gemara refer to sfichim, which are wild growth? So he says that kumedum ali, says Rashi, it appears to me that the first batch is edible, but not the subsequent growths. So these don't qualify as oichel. What's the second condition? V'nishmar, as opposed to l'mutim hefker, as opposed to hefker. V'gdul min haaretz, what is that? L'mutik meim b'pitrius, as opposed to all kinds of mushrooms which are not considered growing out of the ground. something which is harvested at once, and mutatain as opposed to figs, which are harvested incrementally as they ripen. Something which can be stored, as opposed to vegetables which wither and So regarding peah, the material must have 5 features. But by Meiser, all you need is 3 to activate Meiser. As long as it's food, owned, coming out of the ground, it's chayv masras. But we need not have those added 2 conditions. That one, it's not mentioned on that list. So clearly, something which conforms to the 3 is chayv masra, but on chayv peah, as per the Mishnah. One more point, says the Gemara, although yerek is exempt from peah, doesn't have a long shelf life, etc., but suppose amongst your vegetables you have shumim and betzolim, garlic, onions, these have long shelf lives. Chayav, and they're chayv peah as well. There's none. In fact, I'll prove it to you from a Mishnah, which makes reference to the chayv peah by onions. There's none. Malbunis betzolim sheben hayerek. Interesting case. You have a garden full of vegetables, and you have these malbunis betzolim, these rectangular patches of onions growing in between the vegetables. So they're chayv peah, as we said. But question is, shall we treat all the onions as one big happy family and only separate one peah, or shall we say each rectangle, each patch is a separate entity because of the vegetables that are separating them? It's machlokes. Each one deserves its own peah. It's one peah on all the onions, and the Farshim explained because it's the yerek that's growing in between, and the yerek itself is not really subject to peah, so it doesn't make a hefsek. It doesn't make a separation between the patches of onions. So says the Radvaz. Okay. So again, we have the Mishnah. If you're chayv and peah, you're chayv and master. But if you're chayv and master, it doesn't mean you're chayv and peah, because peah has 5 conditions. Oichel, nishmer, gedul and oretz, harvested at once, can be stored, as opposed to peah, which only needs the first 3 to be chayv and peah. Okay, speaking about materials which are classified as food, regarding these matters of maser, regarding the matters of becoming tamei, tumas oichlin, Amar Rabba, Bar Barchan, or Rabbi Yechon teaches us an interesting concept. Sometimes you can have material which can go either way. Dual functioning material. Ulshan, these plants, these ulshan grass, which is actually a bitter herb. It's discussed in Maseches Pesachim, listed amongst the possible maror candidates. So we have ulshan, which can go either way. It can be fed to the animals, consumed by humans. So is it classified as food? Regarding becoming susceptible to tumas oichlin, it depends on your intent. Depends if it's intended for humans. Ulshan shezorim etchil lebehema. Suppose you planted these ulshan initially for animal feed, which preempts its food status. You had a change of heart. You said, oh, you know what? I'd like to use it for maror. While it's planting, he redesignates it. Between Talmud base. Sure, you can redesignate it, but only once it's picked. Why? Because Rabbi Yechon holds machshavas chibur, a machshava while still growing in the ground, where it doesn't yet have food status. It's still in the ground. It can't become tummy in the ground. Lo yishma machshava. So the machshava at that point is premature. Will not affect a status change. So you must wait until you pick it. It's now considered off the ground, potentially ready for tumah, if in fact you designated for human consumption. Amar Rava, Afanan Amatanina. I can prove this point from a Mishnah as well. A similar story, where seemingly there is designation taking place, but still early in the game, and it doesn't work. Yud Gimel Dvarim Nemru B'Nivlas Oiftar. You have a halacha, interesting halacha. You have a bird, Oiftar, kosher type, a dive. Halacha is that bird will be betame a person not by direct contact. There's no tumas maga, tumas masa on this bird. Only upon swallowing it. As he's swallowing it, he shouldn't be doing it, but it's an avela, but if he does, the person and the clothing upon him become tummy. That's one aspect of its tumah. There's another aspect as well. Since it's food material, it also has a very basic, let's call it, the earlier tumah was tumah chamura, a strict, severe, high-level tumah. It's a person and his clothing. This is more of a basic, let's call it tumah number 1. And that one's tumah number 2. So this is a basic tumah number 1 called tumas oichlin. Like any food that became tummy. In this case, it's already has a self-generating tumah. It doesn't have to come into contact with an external tumah source like a sheretz, which typically a banana has to touch to become tummy. Here, it's tummy in itself. It's inherently tummy because, as we said, it's tummy even a person while being swallowed. So it has a self-generating tumah apparatus. And it's mitame. Tumas oichlin. So if it touches another food, whatever, right? Now for that, to give it that basic tumah, you need machshava. We're going to see later in cases where there aren't so many buyers. It's in a village where there isn't such high demand for dead birds. In that case, you have to designate it as food, in which case it gets classified as food, and it has tumas oichlin. So again, you have a dead kosher bird. It's certainly mitama tumah chamura, to the point that if you swallow it, you and your gut become tummy. What about tumah kala, the lighter tumah called tumas oichlin, like any other food that became tummy? So in this case, it will have that as well, even without importing the tumah from elsewhere, without touching a sheretz or another source of tumah. It has its own inherent tumas oichlin. And also, another point, it doesn't need hechsher. It doesn't need preparation. As opposed to a regular, standard piece of food, which first has to get wet. It has to get wetted by one of the 7 primary liquids, water, milk, etc. Here, there's no need for that, because halacha is, again, something which has its own tumah generating capacity. Tumah chamura doesn't need preparation. He's tummy inherently. And Rashi explains the term hechsher refers to the point of wetting it, which is not needed, and also the point of importing some tumah from a sheretz or from elsewhere, come into contact with a source of tumah to become tumah. It doesn't need both preparations. It's inherently tumah. But, as we said, you have to designate it. In cases where it isn't automatically assumed to be a food item. So again, for the tumah chamura, for level 2, it doesn't need machshava. But for tumah kal, to give it a status of tumas oichlin, it has to have status of food. And for that, sometimes you need machshava. Okay, that takes us to the Mishnah. Mishnah Maseches Taharis, first Mishnah. Yud Gimel Dvarim, there were 13 concepts applied. Nemru b'nibla seif tar. V'zechad mem. One of them is tzricha machshava. You have to designate it as food. Ve'ina tzricha hechsher. Doesn't need additional preparation. And the question is, why do I have to have a special machshava now after it died? I mean, it was a kosher bird, presumed to be for human consumption, eventually when you shecht it. So, its default status is food. So why reclassify it? Why redesignate it now after it's dead? Says Rava, this supports Rabbi Yechanan's concept. It's all about timing. And the presumed designation during its lifetime is not enough to give it actual tumah after death. Because while alive, there's no actual tumah activated. So you have to wait until it's in a state where it can have tumah, and at that point you have to designate it. Very similar to Rabbi Yechanan, who says machshava has to come after it's picked off the ground, when it becomes susceptible to tumah. Same idea. The question is, Alma, why do you need a machshava now? Alma machshava is chaim l'shma machshava. What's wrong with the machshava? It's presumed food status during its lifetime. Alma machshava is chaim l'shma machshava. Machshava during its lifetime doesn't count. I'm here as well by the ocean, still growing in the ground. Machshava is machshava during attachment l'shma machshava. Rab Zera Amar, no. You can't prove from there. Perhaps that was different. He wasn't around. There was nobody around to grant it that presumed food status during its lifetime. And that's why it doesn't work. We're talking about a bird that flew in from outer space. It just landed on you. This bird that just landed from high came crashing down, dead. It was never around during its lifetime for us to have that designation. Abaye responds, why are you negating Rava's proof? Fine, so in this case you want to say it just landed out of nowhere. But there was a story later on about a tarnagolis, this chicken in Yavne, where the Gemara later will tell us there was designation. Why? Why is that necessary? If it was presumed to have food designation during its lifetime, he says no. Tarnagolis barahav. That was a wild chicken, a wild turkey of some sort, which wasn't around us during its lifetime. Tarnagolis barahav. They laughed at him. Tarnagolis bara if tamu. How could you suggest it was that type of bird? That's an unkosher bird. But if Tami become a Tami, if Tami doesn't have this Tumah that we're talking about today, which is unique to Iftar, so how can you suggest? I responded to the negators on Reb Zera. Now, he had said it was a wild one. They said, how could it be? Gavi Rabbi Musar, let me teach you something. A little Musar. When a great man says something, don't just discount it. Don't chuckle at it. Don't laugh at him. He didn't mean unkosher type. He just meant shemarda. He means a regular kosher chicken that just happened to take off on the master. He disappeared. Well, my bro, when he said it, bro, he didn't mean that new species. He meant the vroy mimara. It rebelled from its master. I mean, it turned into a wild relative to its master. It means it disappeared on him. We're talking about a kosher bird, but he wasn't around until after death, so that's why there was no food status given to it before. Rapapa Amar, Tanagol to the Agma. He has another pshat. It was a wild type called Tanagol to the Agma from the swamp, and therefore again there was no personal designation during its lifetime. Papa Tamed. Papa is going according to the Shita, who considers this type, this species of fowl to be kosher. Tanagol to Agma. Interestingly, you have two variations of the same species. One is named as like a male, Tarnagol de Agma. That's an unkosher type. Interesting. Taisus Momshat says within the same type, the male is not kosher and the female is. Then he says no, it doesn't sound right. He says that they were just called that way. It's two separate, distinct species. It's sort of subspecies of the Tarnagol de Agma. The Tarnagol to de Agma, the one called female, was a certain type, which was kosher. The one that was given the male name is unkosher, but of course the different types. We have to remember which one is what. So from the Ammonation, the males cannot marry into Klal Yisrael, but the females could. So likewise here, the female sounding name is okay, but not the Darish Mareimar. Further on this topic, Mareimar taught Tarnagol to the Agma Asira. Ultimately, even though initially the Tarnagol to the Agma was okay, but eventually they overturned its status. They gave it non-kosher status. You know why? Rabban noticed the Dor Savachla. It's exhibiting signs of an unkosher bird. It grabs its prey. Vainu Gerusa, and that's what we call Gerusa. So it's by a different name, discussed back in the Chulin, which is a non-kosher type. Tanarabban. Goizel Shanafal Agas. V'chishev Alav Laloisa Lakusi. Tame. So you have this bird, a kosher Goizel, who happened to do a crash landing into your wine press, and you find him unalive. Now you have machshava to feed him to a guy. So that gives it food status, and now it has tumas and tummy. Lakel of Torah, but if you had machshava to feed it to a dog, that does not grant it food status, unless the kavanah is to give it to a person. Rabbi Yochanan says even if it's for a dog, it has food status and has tumas. In fact, Rabbi Yochanan promoted his position with a kal v'chomer. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri. Kal v'chomer. It makes sense that this bird will have tumas oichlin even in absence of a proper food designation. Kal v'chomer. Imetamet tumachamura shlei machshava. As we mentioned before, this dead bird has potential for two tumas. a higher level tumah chamura, that a person gets affected by when he swallows it, his clothing, and that does not need designation. That's an automatic activation. It dies, it has tumah chamura. Don't you think the lighter tumah would happen even without machshava? So why do you need designation? Amr loy. Chacham respond, no, you can't compare. Loy, im amras with tumah chamura. Surely by tumah chamura, designation is not needed. Shekain eni yeredas lakach. It doesn't submit. It doesn't have that requirement of machshava. Toima b'tumah kala, as opposed to tumah kala, which generally needs designation. Shekain yeredas lakach. It's subject. Yeredas means it's subject lakach to this requirement. Typically, for something to have tumah seichel, it has to be labeled as food. Here as well. Amar lehen, so he responded, Tarnagola should be Yavna Techiach. I'll prove to you from the story in Yavna. They had this Tarnagolas that died. She read this Lekach. Okay, so that was the story we referred to earlier. And regarding giving a Tumas Oichlin, which typically requires Machshava, no, but Tumush Le Machshava, they didn't require Machshava. So unlike regular food, which doesn't have Tumah Chamura, okay, so in order to introduce Tumah to it, you have to give it food status. But something which, like we said, is a self-generator of Tumah, not only a simple Tumah, advanced Tumah, severe Tumah, Tumah Chamura. So it's a Tumah factory. Of course they don't have to have Machshava. Amr Eloi, Misham Raya. Rabbanan responded, no, the story is different. Misham Raya, Kusam Hayasham V'chashva Leila Achila. There were Goyim there who intended to eat it. So there was machshav. Okay, so that was the back and forth. And the question is, what's behind the scenes? How do we explain this machlekes? Whether or not this bird needs to have machshava to give it tumah soichel. Ma'askirin. What's the circumstance? Where are we standing here? In the cities? In the villages? High demand, low demand for these dead birds? Either we're sitting in a city. Well, in the Karachim, the cities, why do we need designation? All agree, even the Chacham would agree. Its default status is food. But Tanan, you have a carcass of a kosher type animal, which is something which fetches demand. So wherever it is, or you have a dead kosher bird, which isn't something of such high demand, or you have the fats of the nevela. Sorry, of fats of a kosher animal which had been shechted, which is not edible for us, Yidden, but a goy would eat it. So where are you? B'krachim, in the cities, where there are lots of customers, you don't have to prepare it to become tummy. Machshava you don't need because it's presumed to be meant for human consumption because of the crowds, because of the high demand. And hechsher, which means getting wet and all that, is not needed either, as we explained before, because the Nivlas behema or the Nivlas oif, since they have tumah chamura, you touch a nevela, a person becomes tummy, you swallow the bird. So that preempts any need for additional hechsher. Regarding the chelev, which is of a kosher shechted animal, the reason there is because the act of shchita transforms it into food, and the blood that's present makes the hechsher, depending on the different explanations back in Maseches Chulin. In any case, hechsher is already accomplished here. So clearly, in the Karachim, there's no need for additional machshava to activate tumas oichlin on the bird. So why do Chacham require machshava? The answer is Ela b'Karachim, Ela b'Kfarim. Apparently, we're in the villages where the demand for these items is weaker. In which case, in order to give it food status, you have to have machshava. Okay, so then the question is the other way. Is anybody that disagrees with the machshava requirement? Why would Rabbi Nuri discount that requirement? But now we have a Mishnah. A dead, unkosher type animal, which apparently wasn't so exciting. So wherever it is, even in the cities, the demand for that is very, very weak. Or the dead kosher bird in the villages, where demand is weak, in these, tzricha machshava. Machshava is needed to give it food status. Although, vein tzricha hechsher doesn't need hechsher. So, where are we talking? Are we in the cities? Why is Rabbi Chacham Nuri not requiring machshava? Are we in the villages? Why is Chacham requiring machshava? We're talking about a city here. Big city with lots of buyers. And that will explain why Rabbi Chacham Nuri, even if he intended to feed it to our dogs, he didn't give it human food status, it's less tumah. You don't need machshava. So why the Chacham require machshava? We did a land. The land into a wine press, right into the wine. So the wine flavor, which gets mixed into this, it makes it less attractive. And therefore, made it mius and unwanted, and now we treat it. It made us treat it like a kfar, like you're in a village, which means to say the man becomes weak and it doesn't have food status until it's given food status by way of machshava. So Rashash explains, it seems from the conclusion of the Gemara that there is no conceptual machlekes here. Yes, all agree in general. Nivlas iftar, as we explained, has two aspects of tumah. Let's just recap the whole. Nivlas iftar can be metame tumah chamura and tumah kala. Person swallows it, him and his begadim become tummy as he's swallowing. All agree for that. You don't need any preparation. No machshava, no hechsher, it's just an automatic activation. Regarding tumas oichlin, to give it plain, simple, basic, tumas oichlin, like any other food, to turn around and be metame other fruits, for instance, by way of kant, for that it has to have true food status. So where are we? In the cities. There's no need to give it machshava. No need to give it status, because automatically given that status. And hechsher doesn't need, that's for sure, because since it has tumah chamura, it doesn't need any additional preparation. It doesn't need to get wet, it doesn't need to derive its tumas oichlin from elsewhere. It in itself is metame tumas oichlin. But in the villages, that will happen, provided it was given food status, you had machshava to feed it to an adam. Machlekes simply was in the case where it was sort of in between, it fell into the wine, and it sort of became, not so attractive, not so appetizing. Machlekes there is whether it needs machshava, that will be shita as chacham. Okay, so in a nutshell, we have these contrasting equations. We have a Mishnah where a summa ba'achas me'enav is kosher for edus, but according to Rameir, not kosher for dayanas. Chacham disagree; they allow it even for dayanas based on a different Rabbi Yechon paskin like that, based on a Mishnah in Sanhedrin. We have all kinds of foods which are metame tumas oichlin, but for a chiyav maser has to be out of the ground. In fact, that takes us to the next Mishnah. There are three conditions for chiyav maser: oichel, nishmar, guarded, right, owned, as opposed to hefker, and grown out of the ground. Regarding peyah, there are two additional conditions: the ketasa ke'echad and machis l'kiyim. We have the idea of nivlas iftar, which is metame tumah chamura, and regarding tumah kala, it can be metame as well, provided it has food status. Now, something which can go either way, like the morar plant, which can be fed to the animals or used for human consumption. So it depends on the intent. The machshava will make it roy la'achila, will make it talmud tumas oichlin. According to Rabbi Yechon, that machshava has to take place after it's picked off the ground, when it's considered a food item and put open to tumah. Rava attempted to bring a right to that from the Mishnah of the Nivlas Iftar, which got into the whole discussion of Nivlas Iftar, where we find that it needs machshava only after death. Why not just give it food status based on its presumed status during its lifetime? Apparently, you can't have machshava ahead of time. Only once it arrives at its destination. The Gemara sought to negate that raya. Perhaps it happens to be that the bird wasn't around at the time, in which case it wasn't given that presumed status. So Rava's raya was sort of a bit negated. In any case, Rabbi Yechon holds machshava has to be v'tolash min hakarka. Okay, all the best too, and hatzlacha.